Hello, everybody, and welcome to Edusations. Very excited to have somebody that is very close to me in my personal learning network, Mark from Illinois. Mark, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the viewers?
Sure. My name is Mark Levine. I am a middle school social studies, literacy-based social studies teacher from Romeoville, Illinois. I've been teaching for just about 19 years. Prior to that, I was a child and adolescent psychologist studying cognitive behavior and cognitive development. In other words, the way that the teenagers' brains work.
Okay. What led you to decide to go from that into teaching?
To make a long story short, I needed a break. Sometimes we need to take sabbaticals when we do so much therapy. And I had a friend that needed a substitute teacher after an accident right after winter break. And so I had an opportunity to sit in the classroom. So I was still with teenage kids, but it was a whole different ballgame, and I fell in love with their curiosity, and their excitement to learn, and their excitement to see me, and seeing many at one time, and seeing the positivity. I gave myself 6 months. I pretty much moved and made plans to go back to school and get my 6th college degree. And then before I knew it, I was teaching.
So 6 middle school college degrees right now. Or
no, I actually have
6 college degrees.
6 college degrees. Many of them are in psychology and counseling, clinical counseling. But my first degree is in photojournalism.
Okay. Do you feel like you've been able to use photojournalism much in your class?
No. As a history teacher, I guess photojournalism, the understanding of the power of the photo,
right,
using primary source images, which I love to do. I love to use them as starters, as introductions, as creating background knowledge, and as summaries as well. You know, creating study guides in a sense through an image. So I guess I didn't recognize until just this second that I.
All right. Good. So, something that you said that stuck out to me too is that it's a literacy-based social studies position. How do you feel? And it's probably really obvious just based off the name, but what are some of the stark contrasts to a literacy-based approach to social studies, maybe compared to the standard approach?
Yeah, the standard approach. We all know some semblance of Common Core. And in Common Core, there are 10 reading and 10 writing standards that are surrounded around social sciences. And that really kind of came out for us in 2010. But I started using those components probably about 2 months in from teaching, because I realized that my kids didn't read the book. And those that did, they explained to me that I read it, but I have no idea what it meant. So seeing that really all I was doing was transferring information as a content specialist in a sense, and telling stories, I didn't feel that the students were really getting the full bang for their buck as far as learning. So I started to create a more of an independent learning circumstance. And the way to do that was through literacy, through the reading and writing. So I recognized that I needed to create and develop skills within my students, understanding how to use text and how to stop and reflect, how to create summarizations in their minds and so forth. So for me, I teach in a workshop model, which you and I have talked about a little bit. So to give you some insight into my classroom, if you were to walk in and see my class, the first 7 minutes, as you walk in, before the bell rings as a student, you would see a major question, a compelling question is what I call it, with an image. And right away, you know what the learning target is. I don't write learning targets. I have a question that is a big question that they know that my students know that is going to be answered in some depth. And they know that the image has some sort of clue, some sort of entryway into what they're going to learn. And then I choose a component of it in which I talk in depth. And it's, in a sense, it's kind of like a book talk of history. It's whetting their appetite and creating curiosity. And after about 7 minutes, no more than 10, I may show a 2-minute video clip to add to that. And then they have reading to do. And they have some sort of response to text to do. And sometimes I'll go ahead and call time out and I'll do a mini lesson because I'm going around and seeing many students are getting confused on this issue, or they're having difficulty with this kind of skill. So I'll create another mini lesson, or I'll throw in a video to kind of give them more background knowledge and buttress what they're reading and keep the curiosity alive.
Nice. So, and speaking of this, and speaking of your literacy position, right now, one of the grad school class that I'm taking right now is about strengthening literacies. And so I figure we could just spend a little bit of time too talking about, how would you define literacy to somebody?
Literacy is the ability to read and write for comprehension. It's the ability to take the reading, make sense of it, connect to their past lives, their past information, their past background information, and utilize skills that they've acquired along the way to basically build a complete understanding in their own truth.
I think that's a great definition in and of itself right there. Yeah. The comprehension piece, I think, is what stands out so much to me with literacy as well. I mean, how many times can you just look at a page and you can say, I read it, but then you can't say anything about
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So what role does digital literacy play in what you do?
Well, digital literacy is essential because we are entirely, especially I am, entirely in love with Google and the Google platform.
Right.
So I use Google Classroom. In fact, everything I do is on Google Classroom, including videos to my students and so forth, that I do mini lessons that they might look at ahead. So in a sense, I can change it into a flipped classroom. Also using Google Classroom, if a student is on vacation or out ill, they have the capacity of seeing everything that they need. I don't completely use Google Classroom and the digital classroom in a sense for reading, because my students, they get really tired very quickly of reading on screen. So I try to mix it up. Right now it's about 40% paper, but everything I give them in paper, I also put on the screen as well. So if they didn't do the reading, they're at a practice, they have a half-hour downtime, they could go ahead and crank it up on their phone and knock it out.
Good.
We also, through that, I give assignments and I create templates through Google Docs. So this way, when my students are doing their writing or taking notes, I can check in with them from my desk, or while I'm walking around, I could grab my Chromebook and walk around and I can see what every student is doing, and I can make immediate comments and give feedback.
Awesome.
So it's almost like going around from student to student workshopping, but I'm able to, my little head pops up and they know that I'm there, and they know that they're going to get some sort of feedback.
Good.
Constructive or positive.
That's awesome. I love that. So, in speaking with what you're talking about with providing feedback, I typically find that whenever I ask my middle school students to write, it's typically met with a kind of reaction. What are some things that you're doing in your classroom so that kids, instead of taking a deep sigh whenever they're writing, they find value in it, they find like real meaning and even joy from it?
Well, first of all, and I tell this to my peers, my colleagues, writing has to become very early on part of the routine. It can't seem like an add-on. Um, so I don't really give my students the opportunity to have that visceral that visceral response of, getting nauseated because they have to write.
Good.
There's also a purpose to the writing, and the skill building is always secondary. I put my students in charge. I believe in, even teaching my 7th and 8th graders, I believe in giving my students a whole lot of say and a whole lot of responsibility in giving their inquiry, their curiosity, an opportunity and a voice. So, much like a lot of people talk about choice in reading, there's always been the movement to not just throw a class novel, but there's those two schools of thought, and then giving choice. I believe in giving my students is open-ended of a writing possibility as far as the responses. I also have them respond in a menu of different types of response formats.
Mm-hmm.
They might respond in text format. They might respond in like a pen pal kind of note or that sort of thing. So I kind of mix it up. But
are you familiar with the raft system or the?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, so changing the audience.
Mm-hmm.
I throw that in there, but more so, when my kids write, kids are creating a claim based on what they read. They're supporting it with evidence, and they're giving reasoning or analysis to the evidence, thus coming back and supporting the claim or argumentative point. So mostly what we're doing is we're writing argumentatives, which is deep work for a 7th and 8th grader.
Yeah.
It's one of these things where I start out small, and I don't want to say I trick the kids, but I slowly turn up the volume knob a little bit, so they don't really realize that they're going from just a paragraph or two to pages, and they start to see the value, and they start to see there's a sense of pride, and that's something that, being a cognitive psychotherapist, I know that kids love to feel proud of their work. And the more that I can capitalize on that and make them excited and wonder, where can I go with my writing? And how could I stay theoretical? In other words, how can I stay with, my claim is based purely on facts, and I'm using citations and so forth, but still put a piece of me in there enough to recognize that, hey, this is my work, and this is my thinking, and these are my words.
Yeah, I love that. So, those students that you have that are really struggling with that, they have a low level of literacy, they struggle with writing or reading comprehension. What are some go-to strategies that you have to help these kids get to where they need to be?
Well, first of all, I haven't used a textbook in 14 years.
Nice.
I gave them away, and my book lady person was excited because I kept on telling her I had extra books, to the point I had 0 in my room, and then I said, I don't have any texts, so what am I supposed to do? So I created, and this again was about 14 years ago, I created this idea that I call an archive. An archive is and I hate the word packet. We don't say the P word in my class. But an archive is a collection of readings and maps and charts and so forth that kind of give us the depth that we want. And I'm able to use various resources, including primary sources. So I try to make it interesting. I try to have it create curiosity. But the thing that I'm able to do with that is I'm able to, at the beginning of the archive, so I'm teaching 7th and 8th graders. from the lowest to the highest in our building.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless which type of learner it is, we start with a very low level text. So the first text in the archive is low level. So it's approachable and reachable to everybody. When I say low level, it's a Lexile that's below grade level. And then I slowly again turn up the volume. So as they go through the archive, the text level and the text complexity is on the rise.
Okay.
Now, at the beginning of the archive, it gives the overview. So so my low level readers, they're going to be satisfied with the information. As we go further and deeper in, it just kind of dissects the information and brings more depth to it, more specificity to it. So my readers, when I workshop with them, when I meet with them individually, that's when I determine in partnership with them how far they're going to go into the archive. So let's say it's a 12-page archive and I have a really low reader. We might negotiate 4 pages in. Where I have a really high reader, I would want them to do the entirety.
Mm-hmm.
So this naturally differentiates, and the workshop model itself naturally differentiates, because I'm meeting, if I had 30 students in my class, I'm meeting with each one of my 30 students, at least checking in with them every day.
That's fantastic. That's a great goal and process. So the workshop model, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right too, because I'm pretty sure, like you said, I think we've thrown some tweets back and forth about this.
Right.
Does this workshop model, does it work like station learning, or how do you have yours structured?
Okay, so many people have seen the pictures of my classroom. I have tables. There are 4 chairs at every table, and I believe in a lot of collaboration. In fact, 50% of my class is collaboration.
Awesome.
That's one of those 21st century skills, certainly. Mm-hmm. So I do my mini lesson, and then I assign the reading. And the reading typically has some sort of sidecar to it, whether they're doing some free response questions that are kind of summarizing what they're reading, or answering some questions. And it's far from a worksheet, because these are synthesizing kind of questions. These are comprehension questions. As the students are doing that, I'm going, and I start in a different place every day. I'm going around and I'm listening to conversations. I'm asking them, what do you know so far? What do you have a question about? What confuses you? What surprises you? So I'm having these mini conversations with my students. So again, in a 30 with a class of 30, I can get through all 30 in about 18 minutes.
Okay.
Just making my rounds. And at that point, I make a decision whether or not it's time for another mini lesson. If I have 10 students that are stuck on one particular thing, mm-hmm. one idea, one concept, or there's a piece of text that they're just not, most of the kids aren't getting, then I'll go ahead and do a mini lesson. I might say, let's go ahead and break this down. Let's do a read aloud. Let's figure this out. Or I might pass it on to the students and ask them, we're all struggling, figure out a way to do it, and then present it to class. Again, most of my classes are student owned. And I start that within the routine schedule of my class really, really early on. By the second week, my students pretty much know the whole ordeal.
Good. They have those routines established. So, I want to shift gears here. It sounds like you relate really well to your students, and you are. I was a little shocked you didn't introduce yourself like this, because I see you introduce yourself like this on Twitter a lot, as the middle school Buddha. Do you feel like this, like taking on this persona, helps you relate to the kids a little more?
You know what? I have, for some bizarre reason, I have been the. And I'm not a self-boastful person, but everyone will tell you that the kids absolutely love me. And I know the kids that I don't even have, that I never had, that I might have, because the sixth graders know of me. I have a reputation. The kids love to come and get attention from me. It's high fives and fist bumps and you know, and I, having that therapy ordeal where I would always remember things about people. You know, I'm, you know, how was your weekend? How was that cruise that you went on? You know, knowing their specific things and certainly knowing their names. My connection with kids, my students would say that he's not our friend. He's someone that we completely respect, but he never talks down to us. Mm. He talks to us, and there's complete respect. Also, they would say, Mr. Levine, he believes that we deserve respect first, and he has to earn it, as opposed to the old school, you know, I'm your teacher, I get respect, you have to earn mine. Mm-hmm. So there's this, I listen to my students. I listen to my students generally, and I listen to my students very specifically because I ask them to talk to me.
Good.
So, and just a kind of an offshoot to this, to give you an example, I have, through the years, about 10 to 12 students, middle school students, come out to me as gay, lesbian, transgender through the school year, a year, before they tell the counselor or before they tell their parents or that sort of thing.
So you're somebody that people feel like this is somebody I can talk to. And listen, Mark, you've given us a lot of really good practical things to think about today. Some would say you should write a book, which I think you're doing, right?
I have 3 irons in the fire.
Okay.
The first iron, which I'm taking my time on, is workshop model. The whole ordeal from start to finish on the workshop model in the history or social science classes. The second one is on student self-regulation. The one I'm most excited about, which is going to be a smaller book, and this is the one that I'm really diving into, is about academic self-esteem. You mentioned that I'm the middle school Buddha, and I call myself the middle school Buddha because I'm very centered. I never yell. And I listen to my students, and my students can come to me, and we have these human to human kind of connections. One thing that I started to recognize when, you know, we all beat our head against the wall wondering, what about these kids that just won't read or just won't complete the assignment or just don't care? Well, I didn't buy it. I didn't buy that was enough. So I started looking at where did their self-esteem or their academic self-esteem, their esteem as a student, where they didn't believe in themselves as a student anymore, where did that fall apart? So I'm lucky enough to be connected to the elementary school that feeds the students to me. So I did a lot of research talking to their prior teachers to find out that it's usually by 2nd or 3rd grade that the students stop being students. They for whatever reason. So I found that interesting, and what I set out to do with my research, which is absolutely live research with live beings, is to find out, first of all, what does this low academic self-esteem look like? Where does it come from? What do the students really need? What are they looking for? And since they've had this and they're constantly, you know, from year to year to year, becoming farther and farther behind, what do they need? Mm-hmm. So it's really about creating and helping students to see the good in themselves and the positive in themselves, and creating small successes along the way to help them get some of their academic self-esteem back. Especially because if they don't have it by high school, they're not going to have it and probably not going to go to college. So if I can create this formula, if you will, that works with most students, even if it worked with 25% of the students, can you imagine how many more students we would see go from struggling in middle school to success and even honors and advanced placement in high school and then eventually college because their self-esteem changed?
Right. A lot to think about. Well, hey, listen, Mark, it's been a great time having you on today, but we are getting to the point where we are almost to the end of the show, which means it's time for some high fives. So 5 questions totally unrelated to education. Are you ready for them?
Yes.
All right. First one, flannel or flip-flops?
Flannel.
Flannel. All right. I had a feeling. Snowblower or shoveling?
I'm old school. I like shoveling.
So is my wife, unfortunately. So
we have a snowblower. My wife uses it.
she will not even let me buy a snowblower, so it's no bingo. 3, hot dogs or hamburger?
I used to have a farm, and I saw what went into hot dogs, and so I prefer a hamburger, maybe a hamburger made out of turkey.
Okay, all right. 4th one, favorite holiday?
Favorite holiday? Wow. I would have to say that my favorite holiday is Thanksgiving. I love the smell of in the house when the food is cooking. Fall is a cool time. You get to bundle up and cuddle, and there's that there's that cold but warm feeling, and you've got the winter ahead of you. I don't know. There's something about Thanksgiving.
Yeah. And then the last one, how do you take your coffee?
Black, and I am a coffee snob.
Okay.
In fact, I get a lot of my coffee from a place called Roastology in Midlothian, Virginia.
All right. I like Virginia.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, right. So, hey, listen, Mark, been great having you on. Before we sign off, any last words of advice or wisdom to people?
As educators, we are only as good as the care that we give ourselves. So we really need to make sure that, and it sounds self-serving and selfish, but self-care, we have to take care of ourselves. Our cup has to be full for us to give what our students need. And now more than ever, because our students need more and more from us.
Good. Yeah. So, hey, do yourself a favor and care for yourself. Make sure you connect with Mark. If you're on Twitter, you'll be able to find his Twitter handle at in the description of the video below. Mark, had a great time having you on. If you're watching the show right now, I hope that if you enjoy what you've seen, you'll click the like button and be sure to click subscribe. That way you can stick around and know anytime a new episode comes out. If you or somebody that you know wants to be on Edusations, they can very easily sign up by going to philstrunk.com/contact. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.